All right, guys, let me know if you heard me, if you can hear me now, and if you can see my screen. It's the projects. You guys are insane. How many projects? Just a ton. This is fantastic. I am so behind. But it's great that you guys are commenting. So I'm going to be hitting you up in probably a week for your thoughts and ways that we can make this better. It's a real important part. Okay, let me check in. James, you can hear? Good. Stefan. Is it Stefan or Steven? Frank, how you doing? Jeremy. Hey, Greg. Hey, Banya. Hey, Jacob. Jesus? Did I say that right? Norman. All right. We are recording, so Nate, if you can make sure that you're recording on your end. I'm recording here. Are you guys getting, whoa, why is that moved back? You guys ready for 4th of July next round? Next weekend? No class. No class. Just going to be, we're just going to pass that one on by. So even if you get something from GoToWebinar, we're not meeting Saturday, the weekend of 4th of July. Okay, let's start this off with questions. What do you guys have going on? Anything I can help with? And then we're going to take a look at what we need to do today and see if we can come up with something cool to kind of showcase the general theme that we have next. So any questions? Greg, is that the same for all courses? Oh, you're asking about the weekend. Yes, that is the same for all courses. There should be no classes unless there's some kind of special arrangement, which I don't know of any at this point, where any class will be happening on the Saturday or Sunday, the weekend of the 4th. Instructors are out of town. We're out of town. I'm actually going to be in Austin, Texas, so if anybody's in Austin, Texas, let me know. Hamdi. Hamdi wants to know if the next module will open up. It should not, but this is an online class, and online doesn't care about holidays. So I am sorry, Hamdi, that is actually an issue because we normally don't take holidays off. Normally we don't, but we've got so much going on and so many instructors that it's wise. Let me get back to you on that, Hamdi. Whether or not Project 8 is going to open up for you. Project 8 is not something I would leave you alone on. There are videos. It does walk you through stuff, but hard surface does require some brain changes. So no matter what, we will be meeting and discussing hard surface. The good news is it can kind of work in conjunction with Project 9, I think. In fact, Project 8, 9, and 10 could just be like a crazy bunch of stuff to go over. Okay, we're just taking 10 minutes, guys. If you're coming in late, we're just taking 10 minutes and going over questions. And I'm just connecting with everybody, making sure they have a moment to say what they need before I jump into lectures, because that's when my brain changes and it's harder to answer questions. Chris, you like Austin? I want to pick your brain then. Greg, yeah, don't wait up for classes. You know, in your time zone, we are celebrating independence. And I'm going to Texas, where they probably celebrate it even larger than California. David, if we were working on a project on another tutorial, can we post it? Yeah, David, absolutely. If you're working on something else and you want it in here, I don't mind. I am, even though you guys have overwhelmed me, I am going to get in there and respond to everything. And yeah, it's just this way you guys are talking to each other too. Ashok, I won't be able to attend today's class. Happy 4th of July. Thank you, and happy 4th to you. But you're attending it right now. So now I'm confused. James, not a question, but a general comment. Group toggle. I stumbled on to group toggle for Dynamesh, yes. Okay, glad that worked out. Jeremy, Austin's great. Spent some time there for South by Southwest. Yeah, South by Southwest is supposed to be a big distortion field. Just adjusting the desk all the way against the wall. All right. One more question. Is there a way to pinpoint the transpose tool to position and orientation so that it remains that way when I recall it? No, there is not. Yes. So this was actually well, you know what? I'm going to explain a lot about the transpose today. I do it in the lectures, but Mark, you've probably heard me say this already, but it'll bear fruit for other people. Okay, no more questions. Let's jump into things and see what we are going to be covering today. So we have gone through projects 5 and 6. That's my hope, getting you into the brush system, which is the heart of ZBrush. It's also the core technology. The brush system is what makes ZBrush ZBrush, and is what distinguished ZBrush early on from Maya. The easiest way to kind of make that very obvious is just use the brush tool inside Maya, and then come and use the brush tool inside of ZBrush. And so separating these guys out, it all starts with the brushes. Everything is going to revolve around brushes. Masking, posing. You'll notice that transpose is actually listed as a brush. All of that. Brushes they're supposed to be your hands, basically. All right, so let's open this up. Take a look. Masking and posing. So the idea is that you sculpted a character earlier on, and now we're going to get in and start to deal with posing, deal with some kind of real-world units, and some kind of export, so to speak. So this is a lot of good information in here. Let's take a quick preview ahead to hard surface. Now this is all panel loops, polygroups, polish, extruding, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So since we know that next week we have hard surface, which will likely be armor related, although you could do something else, a gun or something like that using those techniques, then what we're going to want to do is talk a little bit about our character development, and things of that nature. So let's see, mesh extraction, shadow box. Yeah, this is all really, let's summarize what this is all about. This is mesh generation. Okay, and part of the mesh generation requires us to have transpose. So what do you guys think would be a cool project for us to work on? In this one, in this particular one, it's kind of a low, like it's one where I could use your input. What would be a really cool project, hey Carlos, for us to hit next? You've sculpted a character, You can pose it. We can talk about symmetry, sculpting in pose, sculpting out of pose, layers. But I'd love some direction from you guys. Okay, and while you're figuring that out, let's get ourselves into ZBrush, and let me see if I can load one of the projects. Let's start early on. Is that a ZTL? And I'm going to flat color, MRGB, and fill object, just to remove everything. Got to do it to the body though. And then I can use any material at all. And let's take that down a notch. Do we have Fred in here? We got to send our congrats to Fredini. He just got his project got a lot of press. Okay, let me look here. Blocking characters. That's what Mitchell says. Layers, still not clear on them. I was having problems blocking out or something out of Z-spheres. Muscle groups change per given pose, but that's a huge, only so much you can take from reference, yes. Use yourself as reference. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about, say, a character, and let me outline this. And I want kind of an up-down from you guys. So we're going to talk about like a, let's say a character. So it'll be kind of character focused. Not everything is always character focused. And in fact, the hard surface will not be character focused. We'll probably do a gun during the practicum or something like that. So we're going to do a character. We're going to do a block in. Okay, some of the thinking that we have to deal with. And then get it into a pose. And via the pose, we're going to have to consider subtools. We're going to have to consider layers. And definitely transpose. So block in, we're talking SDiv, we're talking Dynamesh, and all of that stuff. You want to do that? See if we can do that in about an hour and a half? Just give me if anybody's opposed to it, just give me a no. Give me a yes, give me a no. What do you think? I want to make sure it's valuable to you guys. That's the benefit of these practicums, is it's very much about you, more you than me. We're at a good point to talk about this too. I'm just letting the chat fill up so I can see your guys' opinions. It's a good point to do this too because you have learned brushes. You've learned basic mesh creation, and you've sculpted a face. So now we want to get a little bit more complex. Like you can see this guy here, the werewolf. I forget what somebody called him the other day. You know, we can start to look at how we can build form for different things. The idea being not to just create an 8-head character, although I guess what we could do is we could start 8 heads, so you have that proportional measurement, and then we'll modify the 8-head into something else. And that's what I did with this guy. I mean, basically this is an 8-head character who then the muzzle moved out, the rib cage collapsed because of the canine aspect, the hands just extended down, and on from that. This is just basically the foot, but you guys already know that. Okay, looking at the questions or the comments. Wendigo. I still got to figure out what that is. Haven't seen it yet. Okay. Mech would be cool. Mitchell, let's do mech the next time we meet. That's definitely not something we want to do today. That would be running. Okay, let's get jump starting. So we're not going to use this guy. We're going to use something else. We're going to look at the different ways in which we can start to create figures. One thing you'll notice is this is actually similar to the pose that we had there. This is a Z-sphere model. We're not going to look at how to create Z-spheres. This is actually something you can load directly into ZBrush. So let's start over from scratch. Let's go into our default sphere. Do not save changes. Okay, and we want to start with a character pipeline. So the process 99, well, let's say the process 80, you know what? It's sometimes 50-50, and it all depends on what you're doing, actually. If you're in production, you have a clear goal. Okay, the first thing is base mesh, T-pose, or something else. The T-pose, your riggers and your lead will tell you what they want you to do, but a T-pose with the arms out like this is used significantly less these days, and that's because the anatomy of the shoulders changes dramatically. Mostly what happens is it's a 45-degree angle out like this. Okay, and then also the knees get bent a little bit. Anybody, there's also a bend. Anybody know why the knees get bent and why the arm is somewhere around a 45-degree angle? Anybody with a rigging side, or did they mention that in the rigging webinar we had last week? If you're in production, what are the things that you're thinking about in the base shape? So as Mitchell says, you definitely want more natural deformations. So you don't want like this. Anybody who studied anatomy, you'll know when you raise your arms above a certain level, it's all deltoid, and the deltoid has 3 heads, but you know, a couple of those heads have multiple parts to them, and they're fingered, so to speak. So it changes shape dramatically. Not to mention the scapula in the back completely shifts and swings around and changes its orientation and all of that stuff. So the deformations are quite extreme. So yeah, more natural deformation. But one of the big things that we're talking about when you're dealing with the pose is automatic rigging. So it's being able to have a software program go in and say instantly distinguish all the vertices in the arm from those vertices in the leg. And to do it quickly, timely, and you know, with a good bit of intelligence about, let's say the finger might be close to the thigh, but don't bind the finger to the thigh. Don't bind the thigh to the hand. So there has to be a certain amount of space that the computer can count on and a certain vector for it to be just easier to automate all of that stuff. And then also when you're rigging, joints have like an orientation. So a joint that's straight up and down, it doesn't know, hey, do I bend this way? Do I bend that way? Which is my preferential direction. So if we bend it, then you know, okay, we know it's collapsing like this. And so that helps the software set everything up. It helps it understand compression, and it just gives it a hook into what you're going to be doing later. And it's been a while since I've seen rigging in a production environment. I can imagine it's only got more and more complex. But having software automatically rig your characters, like first somebody creates the rig, then a programmer creates software that would automate the creation of that. That was done, 5 years ago they were doing that. So, all right, let me check in with you guys. IK solvers for knees, yeah. Thanks, Ari. That's this part. Ari's referring to, whoops. Which way is that IK? How's this gonna, it all just helps if you have that slight bend. Mitchell's talking about setup machines, so that's another one that if you're at EA has their own setup machine. They might use setup machine, but they'll have their own, the programmers will, and it'll happen right before the model goes into the game. They have their own programs that do that. Okay, so if we're in production, you have a base model, and as somebody mentioned, the A pose. If you are doing toy sculpting, something like that, like let's say something Steve Lord would do, he does not do a pose. He sculpts in pose. Again, Steve Lord will sculpt in pose. Why would you not sculpt in pose if your ultimate model is going to be posed? What would be the reason to not sculpt in pose? Anybody want to take a guess? Jacob, you can save time by using symmetry. You can. If you're going to animate it, you can't use symmetry. Let's say we do T-pose, then break for toy pose. Yeah, as Jason says, in games they'll do the production, A pose, T pose, whatever it's going to be, and then they send that off to somebody else, and then somebody poses that for toys. But I tell you the real reason why why you would not sculpt in pose, and that's what Israel says. It's easier to be consistent with symmetrical volumes. Basically, that's a very eloquent way of saying that's freaking hard. It's really hard to sculpt in pose because you, inside your own brain, are having to keep track of volume. So, of course, Steve Lord, he's one of the best I've ever seen. He's past that. You and I, we might think about, a base model, an A pose, and then go from there. But there's problems. So posing, as you will see, is not free and clear. There's stuff that happens, and as Mark was asking earlier, he really wanted a rig out of transpose. So you'll see it as we do it. Transpose makes this decision between rigging and a real kind of on-the-fly manipulation. Rigging takes time, even if you're using setup machine. You cannot open up Maya and be out of Maya in under 45 minutes. It's never happened to me. Maya opens and that's it. I'm in Maya for an hour. Nothing goes quickly at all. If you're in ZBrush, it might take you a half hour, but you can pose that that model. And there might be some manual steps, but you're going to pose that model. Not to mention rigging. If anybody saw the webinar, who saw the webinar? Give me a shout out. Let me see how many of you guys were able to see it. But that is a different brain. It's amazing. And for me, rigging is art. There is a massive element for us artists, because as artists, we tend to think of ourselves as artistes and this kind of right brain. But we forget that there is a serious right brain aspect to math. These high-end math geniuses, they're not accountants. They're not working purely from their left brain. Einstein was not working from his left brain, all the time, not even 50% of the time. This is the genius that discovered the math of the universe. He's working from his right side. He's working from the artistic side. Rigging has that element. I've studied it. I've done scripting. I've wrote programs that auto rig, stuff like that. And that, once you're in it, it is this amazing creative place. But it is a totally different creative place than sculpting. It's like your wood shop and your paint studio. They're just different. So rigging takes time. On-the-fly manipulation, that's what you'll see. That's what transpose is. That's a different deal. But if you're doing on-the-fly manipulation, the problem is there is a ton of resculpting. A ton. You can't get around it. Can't get around it. Not only can you not get around it, you don't want to get around it. You want to be done with posing quickly, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because you got a ton of resculpting to do. If you don't want to do resculpting, well, that's fine. Go to Maya, rig it, create a muscle system, get everything together so that you can pose it, put it in deformation, and you go from there. Or you can also consider DAZ and Poser and things like that, where they've got their pre-made rig and mesh deformation system, and then you can use that as a base. Those are all possibilities. The DAZ thing has a whole bunch of cultural implications, and then also their anatomy is not so solid, so you cannot depend on them. It's like painting from photographs. Sure, but you do it and you want to do it and you want reference. But if that's the only thing you're going by, then you're dependent on that photograph for your artistic result. You don't want that. You want to have some control over your vision. All right, enough of that lecture. Let's get in and see what we're gonna do. Oh, Anthony, yeah, we can make that available. I think since there was no class, it just happened and was gone. Okay. All right, so base mesh, what are we going to sculpt? 8-head character, that's kind of the idea that we want to go with, something like that. And I'm going to do this because I want to rush for time. I'm going to do this all really quickly. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come into deformation, and I'm going to size this guy down. Let's just reduce the size by half. I could reduce it by half again. So that would give me, if I come in and I put a Z on, the Z axes, it gives me more room in there. Okay, so this is going to be roughly a pelvis. And I'm going to go into my insert brush, come along the top, and hey, it says you have resolution level. So I'm going to delete those. I'm going to turn polyframe off. Okay, bada bing. Bada bing. Okay, and now we use transpose to get everything positioned. So I'm going to go move. I've got my transpose line. I've got 1, 2, 3. These are the different actors I got to work with. I'm going to use, with move, the center dot, and this is snapped. So I press shift and snap it. I'm going to move that up, but I'm going to hold shift while I move it up so that I don't get any deformation. That's not what we want. I'm just going to re-drag it straight out, pressing Shift, so that it's not orientated off to the side like this, and when I press Shift, it's going to stretch it out. So drag it up. This is 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let me make sure. And Okay. Okay, there we go. Move is still on. Control, click, and drag. Drag out my little bone there. One head. Half a head is the neck. So we're good there. This line is actually where the great trochanter is, and also where the pubic symphysis is. The pubic symphysis is 1/3 from the bottom. The did I just forget what that was? That's great. Anybody want to remind me? It's the first time I've forgotten that in years. The pubic symphysis right there. We get our little bowl. We get our ilium, which is moving out like this. We get our sacrum in the back. Move this down. Get our little wings there, and then right there along, a little bit higher than the pubic symphysis, this is where we get the great trochanter to kind of feed out. All right, who's my anatomy nut? Anterior superior iliac crest. Thanks, Chris. Anterior superior iliac crest. Got your ischiums down here. These are basically, you can grab hold of those if you wanted to, but that's where you're sitting. So anyways, we got to move this up, right? So we're going to move it up, but we're not going to move it entirely up, because this, right where the great trochanter is, right where the pubic symphysis, that's going to kind of drag the pelvis down a bit. So Control, click, and drag. There we go. That'll work. Let me do a quick little measurement. Could drop that down a bit. Okay. And switch over to the move brush and just kind of hollow that out. WQ. Get that up a little bit. We just do a little bit of our, let's do draw a line to object. The pelvis is going to be quite thin, thinner anyways. And you've probably all seen the notes. The pelvis tilts this way, the rib cage that way, and then the head kind of juts off. I'm going to turn that line to set object off. Okay, you saw how we did the heads last time. This is really just an informal. And we're going to move that in so it's 3/4. Okay, the ribs, male or female, is going to change. This should be about 1 head wide or more if it's male. 1 head wide. And since we've done this, we're off with our perspective. We needed to come in and set the elevation to 0 so that there was no real perspective from the grid. So anyways, move, control, click, and drag it up, and there's, I'm going to put my head right there. Drop that down a little bit. Okay, now we can use transpose's measurements to just check things. So I'm going to go to move. I'm going to click from one side and off, and then drag it back. And I'm looking up here, how many units? So it says 0.31. I don't want that to say 0.31. So I'm going to come in here and say drag from the bottom and up, and then pull that back down. I'm going to try to say this is one head, right? Because that's my head. So I want that to be one head, yet that's not the number I'm seeing. 2.74. So now we've got to come in and say, go to our preference, transpose units. Oops, fell off it. And I just need to set this to 1. There. So preference, transpose units, calibration distance. It'll just help me align this as one arbitrary head measurement. So with that done, you can drag it off, and there. We've got one head unit. Okay. Pelvis. And how's it working out there? So we don't need it to kind of hold all the shape. That'll eventually be there. Just something. Okay. Basic shapes. We start filling these things in. And I'm going to have to start speeding this up. I started doing more of the educational side of it, so normally I would go much faster. This is going to be my erector spinea muscles and the belly. And then they help me define all aspects of the belly too. I think we'll have to keep the external obliques separate though. And let's put the shoulders in. So this process can seem a slight bit laborious for somebody to do, to block out a figure, but it actually has a lot of really significant relevance. And it's a great teaching tool for you, because even as I'm going through, I'm remembering those books that say the shoulders go and slide forward. And then I'm going to have to take my measurement. One head, but the clavicle is going to be about 0.75. So that's right there. And then the deltoid pulls out from there. So we're going to get close to this marker. So back into draw, pull this out. Okay. Let's pull it forward a little bit. Can you guys hear any of the music? Are you getting any of that coming up? No? Okay, good. Okay, so insert sphere. What's this going to be? This could, anatomically speaking, this could be the trapezius, right? You're going to come in there and just put this in and work this. But this is the difference between écorché, what I'm going to show you right now, and solid form building. The trapezius can come along and also be part of the serratus anterior and the lat. you can get one real simple shape there. Sorry, I just beat the microphone with my hand. So instead of worrying about just the trapezius, which is écorché, and it puts your brain in a different perspective, I like to focus on something that can kind of help me do the whole thing. And you see, I'm just trying to find a good halfway point. Of course, it's crazy, but then we just flatten it. So move, and I just pressed shift along this guy right here, the last point. Then I'm going to move him in. Yeah, there we go. And that neck is not going to cut it. Inflate brush. Insert, let's put the obliques, the same deal. You want to flatten them. Flatten and skew. You see I kind of got a really nice skew in there. Again, this is this looks, or could look, depending on your perspective, it could look like it's a little bit of extra work. But it can really help you in the end. The external oblique kind of wraps around to the front, by the way. And the ribs, we could give the 8th, 9th, and 10th rib a little bit more volume down there and back there. Okay, move, draw. Okay, Dynamesh. We got to work fast. I'm going to keep my resolution low. But let's put the pecs in. The pecs have multiple insertions and origins. Well, they got one insertion, but they got multiple origins. And then also don't forget a nice little thing if you're sculpting on your own, a nice little anatomical point is you give that sternum and the ribs right there a little bit of presence. Don't have the pec come all the way into them because you're talking about a serious bodybuilder at that point. Also remember your nipples are at the 2 head mark. So if it doesn't look right, like if it looks like the nipples are, you know, the pec doesn't have enough room, then the pecs aren't the problem. The rest of it is. So move the rest of it up. I'm control clicking. Let's move that along the rib cage a little. So it just helps us give a sense of everything we're working on. I'm not going to Dynamesh them just yet, though. There's a lot more I'd like to get done. So here, sphere. Make sure your width is fairly accurate. Better to build slowly. Inflate brush. That's not working. I could make that work. I could also switch tools. Curve tube. Where did it go? All the way right there. Stroke, curve functions, delete. Put a little bit of bend in there. Brush keeps snapping. Okay, so that's going to need some love. And then again, B, C. Let's say 3, 2, 1, 0. I'm going to change the size of that by changing my draw size and clicking. And I'm going to delete the curve, use move, and just move those on down. This is like armature wire at this point. Insert sphere. You know, if I wanted to, there's like lots of, I'm just going to do this really simple, basically. But there's a ton of really beautiful form that we could kind of slowly put together, but let's just get a basic shoe. All right, I'm going to cheat. Where did the insert hand go? Right? Insert body parts. So I'm selecting this insert BB parts. I'm going to press, I think it's M, and you'll notice they have a hand. Does a click always reverberate? And Chris, was the click always reverberating, or was it just when I was banging on it? I had to bang because it was getting a little nuts. Greg, the two pecs joined by themselves, that was an artifact. It was a kind of a mistake. Yeah, as Carlos says. Okay, looking through questions. Anthony, glad you like this technique. David, armpits are crazy. They've got so many planes and so many things coming in and out of them. Okay, so this is looking solid, solid-ish. I'm going to do hands though now. Now, I want to address something here though. That's kind of relatively important. Which way are the hands facing is not the topic. Am I cheating? This is more of a fun topic. Am I cheating right now? I just want to hear what you guys think. So hands, that measurement didn't work because transpose kept going down. So I'm going to take it off and back on, and I want that to be about 0.75. Although with a guy, you can make them larger. Also, I'm putting the wrist right there at that pubic symphysis. And yours will vary because, see, this is the bottom of the knee. The knee is, this is 3, 4, 2, the bottom of the knee. That means that the patella is right here. If I put my hands there, my fingertips touch right here. So depending on how much primate you have in your genetic code, how evolved you are, I'm less evolved, then you could have longer arms. Let me check in. I want to know what you guys think. Is it cheating? Such an issue us artists deal with. Am I cheating? I have to, as I wrote once, I have to create every polygon by hand. I've got to design the code that creates the polygon. I must suffer. Forms like this, just so you guys know, in production, this is actually not uncommon. And I'm going to move the arms out a little bit. And also, it's more than just this kind of ZBrush thing that we're doing right now. You want a library of body parts and things that you can kind of pull from. It just makes your life easier. A library of heads that you can manipulate and adjust, and features and things like that. That just makes you a quicker, more valuable person on the team. If you've got all of these things, you can just quickly ramp together. Now, obviously there's some problems. We Dynamesh, it's okay, but his hips have no anatomy in them, no structure. So I'm going to just put a couple of things in here, and really I can get away with a modification of the gluteus medius and maximus. So I'm going to come in, make it kind of large, and then press shift and thin him down. So this is going to be my gluteus medius, and that comes really far up. But it's also going to be what they call my tensor fascia latae, and that comes out. So it's going to really stretch back here. I'm going to pull in there a little bit. I'm going to hide this hand because it's getting in the way. Tensor fascia latae should pull back, not front forward. Okay, then I'm going to pull the butt cheek, gluteus maximus, essentially. Starting to get a little bit more form. I just need a couple more things to do this. Quadriceps. And I'm smoothing the inside, and I'll pull that out. Give them an angle. Everything in the body is in dynamic opposition to something. So that's always fun. The rectus femoris, which is this guy, it actually comes up here and connects not to the anterior superior iliac spine, but like I think they call it it's the anterior inferior iliac spine. So it's below the TFL and it's above the pubic symphysis. So it's great to get that kind of up in there and pushing through. All of this gets filled in with skin and various other delicate things. Hamstrings. Okay. And fill this in with the adductors. Make sure they do not touch. Otherwise you get what happens with the pectoralis. It merges. Okay, now at a certain point, these guys don't like to play nice with each other. So sculpting in the interior is too hard. So I'm going to just kind of use transpose to pull them around and get them better situated. And I had to do that blind. I had no idea where that was going. So these are the adductors. Adductors pull around kind of behind the knee and then towards the front. Okay, please, if you're sculpting a guy, let's not give him like a, super thin space between the legs, and always sculpt a package, cod piece, if you will, but you need to put it there, otherwise so much gets kind of thrown off. Besides it being looking very uncomfortable. Could we put biceps in here? Certainly. Do we need to? Not really. Could I put the knee and the patella and the organization of all of that? Certainly. Do I need to? Not really. Okay. And the one thing I do, no, we'll let that. Let's do a box for the knee, just make our lives a little easier later on. Let's go straight down, rotate. And rotate. And since I did that, I kind of need to put some transition form in there. Take this along the outside if you're going to take it further. I'm not comfortable with that. And use move and create a bit of a tibia. Done. We've sketched that out. His knee actually dropped. I need to fix that. There we go. Largely done, and we have fingers. Isn't that nice? And those need a little reworking. As does that chest. Need to round that out a bit. Or I should say we need to square that a little bit. And then I need to pull back for the armpit. And then the shoulder. And the erector spinea group, they started quite thin. Okay, real simple. I'm just doing this in front of you guys. There are various things that I might change, but we're in a decent space. Let me check in with you guys before we start messing around now, because we're at about 45 minutes on that with edumacation. Hamdi, glad you like it. Latte, time is money. Let me see. Yeah, Jeremy, I agree with you on the standard brush. Cool. Huh? Glad to hear. 10 years ago, what, 15? My old school, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. I was chatting with them about ZBrush the other day. And that was 15, 16 years ago. And the computer was the dark side. Like worse than the dark side back then. Greg, want to know about kit bashing? Okay. Noah, won't the fingers get welded together? Yes, so glad you brought that up, Noah, that we're going to talk about that right now. Chris, mechanical engineers don't use? Yeah, exactly, regarding that cheating, yep. No, Hamdi, even with project, the welding is going to be an issue. Rachel, that's an interesting thing. I think, are you talking about, you're talking about a very old feature. So let me see how they have this implemented. Did I just miss it? Where'd they put Quick 3D? Help me understand more of what you're chatting about, Rachel. So somehow you got 3D edit mode off, and now you're wondering. Because 3D edit mode is an old method of, you would come in here to this, and you would turn desmooth on, and it gave you this ability to have your model smoothed in the viewport. So it was a earlier way to kind of smooth things out, dealing with anti-aliasing and all of that stuff. But it's not used much anymore. Okay, close that out. We do not want to be working with that. Okay. All right, so our guy, I'm going to press F to frame him. You know, he's reasonable. There's some problems, all of that stuff. This is a base mesh that I can definitely sculpt, but I'm going to run into some problems in the arms. So I'm going to actually push those out so they're more of a 45 degree. Yeah, something like that. And let's tackle this issue of all the potential problems that we're going to kind of hit. But first, I really want this area here. I'm not comfortable with this space. I need the anterior superior iliac spine to make a dent and to kind of have some say on the world right there. There we go. There we go, yeah. Okay. Okay. I think we can leave it at that. Let me do some last minute checks. Last minute exaggeration. Let's inflate this. Okay, so now we have a kind of a base mesh with some anatomical notes that are both refined, as we saw up here, and really clunky down here. This is just a function of both your knowledge, speed at which you wish to work, and then also it's good to just see how different levels of form can kind of help you, because we could spend more time on the patella and then the fat around the patella, and then we could have the vastus medialis separate from the rectus femoris, and then we could have the head of the tibia more individually sculpted, the line of the tibia. You know, this is anatomy, but if you're sculpting a gun, does anybody know what the parts are for a gun? There isn't an anatomy to that. The barrel, there's a word for the handle. There's different parts to the handle. There's parts inside this. There's a whole anatomy to guns that once you know it too, you can start to do crazier things. Like the pulse rifles and stuff like that in video games. Okay, I'm about to get into the Dynamesh. I'm just checking in on you guys. Mark, wrong and right in. Chris, rail, slide, barrel, grip, trigger guard, magazine, well. That's the anatomy of the gun. All right. Those are some real heavy quads this guy has, so I'm going to change that a little bit. Okay, so you could spread the fingers out, as somebody says. So we're now in the pre-Dynamesh phase. We are getting ready to Dynamesh this, and we just want to make sure that it doesn't get all screwed up. So we can do this, and I definitely think it's important that we do this to some extent. How much? That's the variable. But let's get them quite separate. There we go. Pretty even distribution there. Now let's just Dynamesh it. Let's see what kind of what happens. Turn Dynamesh on. Got some problems, but we got some successes. This form here is not very nice. It wasn't sculpted very well, wasn't set very well, but we have a general sense of things. That butt is huge when you look at it there. Okay. So what I like to do is keep my Dynamesh resolution low, right? If I do that, totally screwed. There's an easy solution here. I'll see if anybody can shout it out before I get there. If we Dynamesh higher, then we're going to get better results. Okay, but I need to blur this because I don't want I don't want it to be so faithful to all of this detail. So what I'm going to do is a two-step solution. First, I just get it all integrated into one well. I'm going to give a little love to these fingers. Especially the tips, so I don't lose them. But we have one integrated mesh right now. And then we can Z-remesh. We can try anyways. This might take a moment. My computer might stop talking. Give it 1 second to process all of this. Okay, take a look. Got some funky topology coming from a funky sculpt, but we could have sculpted that to exaggerate and get that topology. We have some really crazy topology for the knee, right? But you know, it's not bad. It's gonna work for us. But it's certainly not animation topology. But this thing's completely integrated, and I got fingers! Yay! Can we have a minor cheer for what just happened? I now have a mesh that will be much easier to sculpt than all of those separated out parts, and it's optimized so I have a low res, which I like, because occasionally I like to make global modifications like that are just better suited. Thanks, guys. And yeah, there we go. Let me look at your comments real quick. Chris, you got a great question, so let me come back to that. Anthony, yeah, there should be no more Z-spheres, to be honest with you, in most workflows. The Dynamesh, ZRemesher, panel loops, all of that is on a whole nother plane. So Mitchell, I would not Dynamesh again. No. So what is the purpose of Dynamesh, guys? This is something that I think causes people some confusion, because we think of Dynamesh as though it is this mode. It's like I'm in the Dynamesh mode, and this Dynamesh mode gives me freedom. And this is promoted by Pixologic, this idea that Dynamesh is a mode, but it's not. It is a button just like ZRemesher. If I was to say ZRemesher is a mode that it's a button that you keep on all the time, and now you're in this ZRemesher mode, would that make sense? It doesn't make sense to me that ZRemesher would be a mode. Dynamesh is a mode because this button stays on, and you can control click, and so it's like clay, as they say. But to be honest with you, if it was a pure mode, it would automatically adjust like Sculptress, and it would be kind of built into the core. Really, Dynamesh, it's just a button. It's just a button. Don't think like mode, like it's a mode. Just think of it as this is a button that I press. So when do I press Dynamesh? I press Dynamesh when I want to unify the model. When I want to go from this, where everything is separated out, to a mode in which everything is unified in one mesh, because the brushes don't work well with separated parts. That's all it is. So then the question becomes, what resolution do I work at? When do I leave Dynamesh? That's what I'm talking about, the mode thing. Leave Dynamesh. You don't have to leave it. You're never in it. All you're doing is you're using Dynamesh occasionally to change the geometry of your model. That's it. To integrate parts. That's it. At least as the way the feature exists right now, it's just for unifying the mesh. You should technically press Dynamesh and then unpress Dynamesh. Great. And I just lost all of the history. So we're going to do that again. Okay, so let's say blur 300. Okay, I'm going to inflate these again. And then ZRemesh that. And I'm not adjusting any of these. just press ZRemesher. Okay. We get our geometry, and we're good to go. Let me check in on your comments. Yeah, David's got it right. Dynamesh is about equalizing and increasing polygon, equalizing and basically modifying your polygon's structure. Norman, I don't... you mean can we just skip Dynamesh and just use ZRemesher? I think first you want to unify these. Mitchell says, it's for blocking in. It doesn't seem nearly as miraculous as I thought it was. Yeah. That's good marketing for you, Mitchell. That's the effect of good marketing. It's a miraculous feature that will save your life. And it is. It is an amazing, amazing feature. Hamdi, can I explain why it's not a mode? It is a mode in the sense that, you know, you turn it on and you continually re-Dynamesh. But it's not in the sense of really all you do when you press Control, click, and drag is you just press the Dynamesh button again. That's all it is. So it's like a quasi mode that lets you create. It lets you press this button within the sculpting canvas environment. So. Noah, in the case that you just saw, I did not keep Dynamesh resolution low for the fingers. But if I was doing just the face and the bust, then I would have kept it low because it simplifies the forms. Like earlier, you saw me add a lot of blur to Dynamesh, and that's so that I had smoother forms. And then ZRemesher smooths them even further, and we go from there. Okay. All right, let's get into the adjusting and sculpting and all of that. Hamdi, you don't want to keep it on. I mean, it's on right now. Keep it on if you want. But I don't like it because I just accidentally Dynameshed it. And I don't want that, so I'm going to turn that off. And the way Pixologic describes Dynamesh, it's something you should be in and then get out of. It's not something you stay in. That's their party line. Okay, so I'm not going to divide this yet because we have to break this out. We have to break this into polygroups. It's a little too crazy right now. So what does auto group do? Well, it'll take each one of your separated out pieces and group them different color. Not going to work for us. Can we group by normal? Yeah, but it's not going to work for us. It's a hard surface thing. What we're going to need to use is group visible and group masked. So first thing we need to do is start to create some masks. So I'm going to use topological masking, control, click, and drag. Check the back. And if you want, you know, control, alt, and unpaint the shoulder. The topology is not the best right there for what I wanted to do. But then we can just say group masked. Notice that it grouped the masked part. So what you may want to do is control click to invert the mask and then say group masked parts. Now for the legs, move, control click and drag. Okay, it's funky, the topology. So I'm going to control and then unpaint this area. And then control click, because remember, if I group mask, then it just kills the arm masking. So I need to control click to invert, and there you go. Now we've got the legs, the arms, they're all separate. If you really wanted to, you could separate each one. Auto groups will group these differently because they are separate shells. They're not connected when they're hidden like this. So there you go. Now, this is pretty solid. I'm pretty comfortable with this as a group. And I think we're ready to get in and start doing some sculpting. So we are going to do posed or not posed. I think we're going to do not posed. We're going to do it in a base, in an A pose, the pose that's right now. I'm not going to do a layer right now. I'm going to actually duplicate the subtool and turn that one, the visibility, off, and then make some modifications. What is this guy going to be? What should we make him be? I don't want to sculpt a dude. We can turn him into Thor. We can turn him into a werewolf, a dragon, a fish creature, an orc. I haven't sculpted an orc before, actually. It's not a horrible idea. Ron Swanson. Now we have to Google Ron Swanson. Nice. Okay, we've got Troll, Orc, and Ron Swanson. And Ron, I have to say, is actually a candidate for the Orc, Ron Swanson. But that would require more reference than we're going to have time for. CT. Oh yeah, octopus face, huh? And the Kool-Aid guy. All right, we're going to go kaiju. So kaiju goes the direction of troll and orc, which I think is actually kind of neat. I haven't done much in that, so let's start learning that, start working on that vocabulary. First thing I got to worry about, proportional system. An orc, it's kind of a six-head character, right? So we got to change the proportions of him first and foremost. That's the very first thing we start to focus on. And the relationship of head, pelvis, just jam these things into each other. So what are the ways in which we can do it? We can increase the head. We can decrease the body, so to speak. These are the different ways in which we've got it. But let's move towards a six-head character. Oh, that's why. Angle of view's bugging me. Okay, so move. We have currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. So now we want to shrink wrap that. Hold on one sec. I'm getting all kinds of crazy sounds here today. Nate, can you check on the sounds? Is that, where is that?
Yeah.
Where is it, though? Is it downstairs or is it next door?
No, it's next door.
Oh, it's next door. Okay, yeah, just go check in with him. 6 heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to move that up. I'm going to flatten him a little bit more. Let's turn perspective off for this. Okay. So still keeping a center line. In fact, we can just check right there. And then in this particular case, we've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We're just going to move that head down. And I want to separate out so I'm going to position both these sides kind of here. Start to drop that chest, drop that, widen things. I'm still going to try to find out what's the halfway point between these, and that's the bottom of the knee. So proportions are still going to work. And you see how I just jammed the head in? So I'll fix that with smoothing these guys out. And once I've smoothed it out, which is a destructive process, so to speak, then I got to go in and slowly inflate. Or move these things out. Just flat move them out. And allow for the fact that there's going to be some overlap in there. And that's that. Okay, keeps his stout figure in place. All my anatomical notes are there, and those are some huge feet. And these are some really crappy feet. There's no form here. So one of the things when you're beginning, form like this can throw you off. But then once you know what to do, I mean, you look at, say, Steve Lord, he could sculpt from anything. You could give him a plastic sack and he'll get form out of that because he's bringing it. But when we begin, it helps us to have the form be brought there for us, either by the models we're using or by our own workflow, our own approach. Oops, I'm off symmetry. Stout, thick legs. Okay. All right. So we have something set. Let's move those feet out. That was starting to look weird. And we really need to fix this up, but that knee is going to be a bit of a problem. So I'm going to fix that right now. I'm using trim dynamic to kind of create a bit of a wedge there. And then I'm going to kind of build a little bit of form. So this is the sole, the gastrocnemius, the popliteus, kind of moving into the back. Creates this beautiful track back there. And then we're just going to simplify this form so it's a little bit more anatomical. and just create the road maps that are there in anatomy. Line of the tibia. This is just going to make my life easier later. And a little note in there for the patella. Thanks, Nate. Okay, little things like that. So this needs to get kind of squashed, because what I'm going to do right now is redo the topology, I think. I'm also going to pull that rectus femoris out there. Drop the package. Pressing Alt. I'm going to press Alt now because I want to build that as a straight line. You see how I use the trim dynamic brush to kind of create this pretty serious structure. I mean, it's really amazing for creating these planes using Alt and Not. You can inflate to add some form in there, and then you can kind of fine-tune that. I haven't looked at your questions yet, so give me just a moment. I am going to knock that down. And then we want to have the bicep femoris come over the side. Okay. Okay, let's get some ribs in there. Flatten that out. Strong muscles. Bit of the tricep. Let's try to find that clavicle. And I'm all holding all this stuff in my own mind, and let's put a little beard in there. Just put in the abs. You know, because before it was just kind of straight up and down. You see how quickly I can put those abs in? Bicep. And flatten it. Bicep is smaller than the tricep, so keep that in mind. Ridge muscles. Ridge muscles are going from the lateral epicondyle, another way of saying it's the outside, and they're going to the thumb. They help flex the elbow, so they cross the elbow. Just a simple grouping that is insanely difficult to learn and just get into our thick skulls. At least it was for me, and continues to be. Voila! I think we need to add some room in the adductors and probably not give him so much. Yeah, we just need to give him some bigger thighs, and I'm just letting them inflate into each other. I don't really care. He's stocky. And he's got a beard. And we're going to need more polygons to do much more than that. Let me check in with you guys and turn perspective on. Let me fix that bicep. It's too low. God, you know, it's almost like you shouldn't sculpt the bicep. You should really just sculpt the flat plane. The tricep is what you have to sculpt because that thing is huge. There. There it is. I'm just going to sculpt a couple of plane changes. bulk to no bulk. Let's do that. Getting rid of the bulk underneath the, between the, well, at the elbow. Getting rid of the bulk above the elbow. There you go. Simple plane changes which make a huge deal later. Okay, and this is not figured out, so let's go into 7. This is so tough, guys, that area. Where's the tricep? So there's the long head of the tricep which comes up. If this is the spine of the scapula, it comes down like that, then this is the blade, and then this is the area where the humerus actually inserts into. The blade has this extra little doohickey down below it. Below where the glenoid cavity is, or basically wherever the humerus connects. The long head of the tricep goes in there, and then everything falls off. And so there's this line that I'm going to draw right now with the standard brush. That's like that. And I'm going to pull that long head of the tricep, this guy, and don't worry if you're not getting this. I do have stuff on YouTube that actually breaks this down step by step. That could be quite useful to you. But don't worry about this. This is really tricky stuff, and really it's for the anatomy class. Okay. Anything you sculpt in there is going to be fine. Wow, check out his junk in the trunk. There, that's a little better. Rotund guy with barely any butt, massive tree trunk legs, some structural elements. Those pectoralis really worked for us. And I think we're pretty solid. Ready to hit another level with this. Let me check in with you. See how you're doing. Okay, and we probably should save, although it has been auto-saving. One second, let me save it. We're in R6 projects. Well, first we went straight into dwarf. Okay, I ended up doing a dwarf. I was thinking about a dwarf the whole time. Let me check in with you guys. I'm just reading. Aaron, ZBrush to get an efficient shape and animation topology. I know people they don't go through the ZBrush phase. But that's a nuanced point. I'll let usable topology be there. But Dynamesh is usable retopology, or is usable topology. Hamdi, sculpting is an old habit. Yeah, sculpting like this, it's an old habit. That's exactly what it is. I've seen like Cesar Zambelli and Jose Pericles, and they work at much higher resolutions. And those are all just different approaches. There's not one that they favor, Pixologic favors per se. He's got a bit of a sunken chest there. but the tool focuses, or the software is geared towards the Jose Pericles higher resolution sculpting approaches. I like this because it keeps everything very, very low, very clean and blocky. Like I can't sculpt extra little details in there. But you'll see Steve Lord, he'll work at 5 times this resolution, and he likes to work and smooth things in. So it's a different approach. Where I am blocking in structure, you'll see Steve Lord's going to start, and work with something that's a lot higher res and smoother like this, and he'll just find it and find form slowly. It's also a function of teaching Hamdi. Since I do a lot of the sculpting when I'm teaching, the low res is very, very clean when I'm describing what I'm doing. Okay. All right. So orc or dwarf, obviously if you're the orc, I got to undo that beard, or as Noah says, it's the Santa orc. And I don't know, I'm kind of up on this beard. So what are we at? 500,000, and we are at about an hour and 45 minutes. So we want to give some kind of pose to this guy and some kind of attitude to him. So let's quickly go through this process of giving him a face. And since I want to do it quickly, I'm going to try not to teach, but that just doesn't really work for me. Let's do a quick breakdown. Boom, boom. Nose, mouth, big bulbous nose, big thick lips, big forehead, temporal line, really chunky ears. Okay, so that's now in my head. I'm using clay buildup. Pull down the front of the face. Get the beard in there. Maybe it's wise to sculpt lips first, or put the muzzle of the mouth in there. There, I put the muzzle of the mouth, and then I sculpt that on top. Okay, let's get this head as a separate piece. I'm going to drop down in my subdivision levels. Shift D, move, Control, click, and drag. And I'm going to go polygroups, group masked. Turn on polyframe, and there we go. Press D to go up my resolutions, and now I can be a little freer. Got to be careful. Edges get kind of crazy, but I'm working fast, so I'll just be smoothing them out and messing them up, and I'm really not terribly worried about them. I know they're going to get all kind of junked up. There we go. Set the depth of the eyes. Let's give the superciliary arch a lot of volume, really big. Let's give some back, set the the cheek, sorry, back a bit. Notice I am sculpting here, but I look here. small eyes. So I pushed in and now I'm pulling out, which might seem like it makes no sense, but once you've done it, you see it actually kind of helps set you up for success quite naturally. Okay, and this is that frontal cephenoidal process. Give the infraorbital margin a little bit more space. Come in here for that frontal cephenoidal. Give the cheekbone a little bit of life, but not much. Dip in. Boom. Let's create some variety there. Shoo. I'm working real fast to get an ear. Okay, looks crazy, but crazy works sometimes. Just smooth that out. This is part of just get in and really beat the surface up, smooth it out. There's a lot you can do just beating the surface up. See, this is like, if you're being careful, you might think everything that's happening right now is it's going nuts. But I'm totally fine with that because I'm working quite quickly. And once smooth, it's all back. But it has some of what was in there before, so it doesn't take much to make that happy. Sternocleidomastoid. Okay, just going to leave that like that. But I am going to move his neck. And this is kind of a cross section of a neck. So that's kind of cool. And then let's put it all, yeah. Lower the res. And I need these guys to now just kind of merge together. When I smooth it, it'll kind of screw it up, but I'm going to set that beard on him. But for right now, even though there's this line here, this is fine with me. And nuchal, find the nuchal line inferior to superior of the mastoid process. That's skull. The trapezius does not connect beyond that. Find your plane breaks. Boom, boom. Where is the ascending? Where is the transversing? When is the descending? I might have that ascending and descending inverted, but that's the kind of thing that happens. I don't have to perform surgery, so I don't need to know exactly which one's ascending or descending. Right off the top of my head. Okay, and now we come in. We're working on the transversal portion. Pull out. Is he, yeah, still working at that speed? Maybe we move that up and he has even less of it. Okay, but we're moving. And I'm going to tuck that ear in. And I'm going to move that ear back. So I can sculpt a little bit of the there we go. Got some bushy eyebrows. Okay, Control D to divide it. There, push in a little bit of an eye in there. Push in a little bit of a nostril. I'm going to start to push in an overlap. That's just nice because it creates a shadow. Okay, that went nuts, right? But lower the subdiv, smooth it out, go back up. It'll work better the next time. And inflate this ear. Get a little notch right there. Get the tragus, the antitragus, the antihelix. And it's starting to work. Okay. That was a lot of merging, masking, yada yada. I just want to set the beard down. I am loathing that repetitive shape I just did. All right. I don't know. Proportions don't look so good for him. Something needs to get expanded, or his head needs to get made smaller or pulled up. I don't know. That looks a little better. Okay, let me check in with you guys. See how you're doing. Thanks, Peter. Okay, I'm just going to take a pause here real quick, guys, and see how you're doing, because I just been sculpting. Any questions? Anything I can answer? The goal here is we're going to get into posing this character and maybe even creating some pieces for him. Play-Doh dwarf. Awesome. All right, just another second. You might want to let me know if you're going to ask a question, and then I can wait. But I'm about to leave them at this stage, and then see what I can do about maybe quickly creating some pieces and posing. Okay, Greg just wants to know about kit bashing. That one I might need to do next time, because breaking him up into pieces is there's not really a good benefit to that. Okay, no other questions. I'm going to move forward and start seeing what else we can do. So it's a character. I don't need to sculpt, I don't really need to sculpt past this to start getting to the next stage, in my opinion. What we need are some sort of boots, some system for boots for this guy. So you'll see it in the lectures if you don't already know how to do this. But we can just come in here and create some boots. We'll go into Subtools, Extract. We'll just press Extract, and as soon as you move it, that goes away, but I'm going to say Extract. It's too thick. Still too thick. .07. I think that's actually too thick. .007. There you go. .009. Yeah. Extract, accept, becomes a separate subtool. Control, select it, then control click and clear the mask. And then we can come in here, make sure symmetry is on. You have to enable symmetry for all of these guys. Come in here and mask out the bottom like this. Control click and drag. And now you can use move, drag that down, and squash it. So white dot, and then the other one, the bottom one. And we've just created a flat sole there. And now we can kind of scale that out. Okay, but with L symmetry on, there we go. Okay, so pretty basic setup using transposes features, a mask and transpose to pull it out, and then we just kind of smoothed it around to kind of make it work. You can divide those once, twice. You can go into the standard brush. You just add some of the normal wrinkles that accumulate in these areas, like right here it'll have a compression wrinkle. And then you may get some other wrinkles that kind of flow in, but we got that. Now we come into this guy and we want, let's say, some kind of armor outfit, right? Would I grab the armor outfit from here? Well, it's going to have the legs in there. So for some kind of armor outfit, I would grab this section, extract, accept, select it, clear it, symmetry. This is like, here we could give him a little hospital gown. Or we could also, let's delete this, delete that. Careful, Ryan. Which ones were you selecting? And I'm going to unmask this. Okay, accept, or extract, accept, voila, okay. And then mask all that out and just stretch that down. Make sure symmetry's on. And he's got a nice little dress. Or we could do that in parts and pieces, you know, however you're going to do the armor or the outfit. Let's do some gauntlets on the guy. In fact, I need some reference right now. So I'm not flying too blind. What kind of... this will be a good one. It's clothing. We're not going to do all the intricate details and patterns and things like that, but the thing that I like about this is that this is fabric. So how are you going to sculpt the fabric of this character, kind of moving as he moves, and then we've got the gloves and all of that stuff. So I like that because that'll give us a sense of one of the really big issues we have to kind of deal with. So let's kill this, delete, and we're back to this guy. But we're going to unmask the center. Extract, accept. Oops, that was too quick. What happened there? I'll worry about that later. Extract, accept, boom, boom. Symmetry is on. How do I fold these over each other? Do I fold these over each other? When do I fold them over each other? How far can I get away with stretching things like this? And then what's going on right there? That's that armpit that it was taking. I am going to even this out a little bit. You have to lower your draw size to really make that happen. And I do want to straighten some edges. So I'm going to go to curve. I'm going to turn AccuCurve on for the move brush. That gives me my straight lines. Maybe a helmet is something that gets made for him in the next class. G for solo mode. There, God, that AccuCurve is just amazing. But it really only works for that one thing. Otherwise, it's kind of a pain. Okay, so let's do one more. It looks like some armor plating on the side here, coming all the way up would be really nice. Extract, accept, clear the mask, turn the other one on, and then I'm going to make sure symmetry is on and move them out. I'm smoothing that edge, and if it ever gets too smooth, you just inflate it again, and you get thickness. But I don't really like the shape that I got here. And I want some hard edge, so move AccuCurve. And I kind of want to duplicate these for some reason. Control click on the center guy. Back to using the move brush, but AccuCurve off. Just add some visual complexity. And let's give him, I'm going to increase the subdivision level. Whoops. And let's give it a little bit of a helmet. Pretty simple, but I am going to create some specific forms. Okay, extract, accept. Symmetry on for both, just press X. Move brush, AccuCurve. How am I doing on time? Okay. And now the shape is not really what I wanted, or what I want now. It's not bad, but I really want to change that shape. So this is a case of, what's Dynamesh used for? I can kind of keep this nose plate shape if I wanted to. Protect his temples. I can also try to Dynamesh this. And let's inflate that, give that a nice ridge. That geometry is all messed up, but I don't know if you see it this way, but that actually works for me. Trim dynamic. Move brush. Okay, inflate it, and then inflate the cranial portion. Maybe magnify. Back to the move brush. And let's put something that indicates that this is, we know this is the nuchal ligament, or the nuchal line. And I'm going to do a little sculpting right here. Magnify brush. Inflate. And we'll go a little bit towards simians with a sagittal crest. Some design can come in there later. Okay. That looks like a rooster head. Just an instant no. Okay. We got a couple of parts, pieces, enough to give us some trouble. Let me check in with you guys, then we're going to pose. Okay, looks like you guys are doing okay. All right, let's talk posing now. We have a base mesh, we've got a character, let's go and use a different material. Also, we're going to change one of the features. Number one, set my color to white. And number two, go to preference. And we need to change the object dimming. Inactive subtool dimming, we're going to set that to 0.9. As soon as you rotate, you'll see it. That'll be less dimming. So preference, edit, inactive subtool, I increase that. So figuring out a pose is kind of, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of things to get going, on this. And when we've got multiple parts, how do you do it? One thing that I like to do, and in fact, let's save this, dwarf one. Okay, one thing I like to do is come in here and use the mannequins, but these are projects, so they don't load as ZTLs. You kind of have to go in and you have to save this, start one of them, and kind of go from there. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I've saved my project. I'm going to select this one and say, yeah, I've already saved it, so no, don't sweat it. These kind of that proportional system. We go to move. You can move this guy around. All I did was I clicked here and dragged down. He's got a kind of IK in there. Turn symmetry off. I'm gonna move him to one side, and I'm selecting not the center circle. I select the space in between. It'll take a little bit of getting used to. We can also rotate, so we kind of rotate, and in rotation we're selecting the piece. You can rotate a limb. You can also just move it. And up from there. My brain died. Let's go back. Hunch him over. Arms in. Pull him out a little bit. He's probably going to have some kind of axe that he can kind of be resting on. I find it really, really incredibly helpful to kind of figure that stuff out in advance. As much as possible. What kind of contrapposto are we going to have? Work with these mannequins. See if you can kind of come up with a shape, something that works. I'm going to jump in back to our model and get something really quick because I only have about 10 minutes. And I want you guys to see this part. It's going to take a little bit to load. It's still got all my undos. Ignacio, I'm not going to do Z-spheres right now. I can do those for you guys later, but not right now. Okay, one trick, I've saved this, but I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say delete undo history on him. And you can do that for all the rest of them as well. But none of them are going to have as much undo history as the other one, as the initial one. So then you come in, you say File, Save As, and then I'll save it as a dwarf 01, no undo. Just a little trick, makes it faster. You can see it's saved in 0.67 seconds. Now, this is what I want to show you. We're going to pose it, so I'm going to use Transpose Master. I'm going to just click it. Make sure you save your model before you do that. And you'll see it has created a new mesh, T-pose1 extract, that is separate from your previous model. It will also be the low res of your model. Every subtool will be at the lowest res that it is. They'll be combined as one, but separated into poly groups. Don't change the poly groups. Don't change anything just for safety and sanity. So the first thing I like to do is get in here and figure him out. So let's give him a little something. We're going to plant his feet farther apart. But this is a little bit, let's go here and we're going to have to manually place that. Notice that I'm going to lose the boots doing this. So that takes away the advantage of using Transpose Master. So don't do it like that. Use Transpose Master the way it's meant to be. Let's hide these subtools. And let's just use some simple masking to help us. Invert it. Control click to blur it. Okay, you'll have some resculpting to do, but that's fine. Invert it, blur it. Really got to be careful. Blur it. Put it where that femur, great trochanter is. Okay. And maybe I want this leg to move forward. Yeah. Let's get that leg to move forward. And then blur it. Bend the knee. Some resculpting that needs to be done there. Or what I should do is just be better about my polygon management. Okay, and I'm going to mask all of that and some of that, invert it, blur it. Anytime you rotate the pelvis, I'm going to rotate it the other way. Anytime you rotate the pelvis, well, let's do this. Let me get it where it'll be accurate for you. When you rotate the pelvis, you got to rotate the spine. So all of this actually shifts to the other direction, like a landslide. So as soon as I do this, I'll control, click, and drag, and then I just move everything over. You can technically rotate it. Okay, but then you're going to need to come up here and mask that and rotate it back. Just so you know. And while you're at it, could add some contrapposto. Okay, but don't do it from this front vertex. Put this in the spine, where his spine should be. But dwarfs aren't known for, elegant poses. They're tree trunks. So you need to keep that in mind in this equation. Blurring that, and I'm going to rotate that the other way. I love that he's got a nice pose now. I'm going to unmask this, move that foot forward, move that back, drag it down. There we go. Check the back when you move this guy. Put it inside where the bone is. And you see I'm totally cheating here. I'm not maintaining anatomical or true skeletal rigging. Control click to blur. I'm going to move that arm forward. I am going to now, how much time do I have? I now want to rotate the arm so that I can kind of pull him in here. But there's a lot of rotations that need to happen. One, I got to bend the elbow up, and then I've got to rotate the entire thing over. So there's a lot of steps to doing this. See, I'm kind of just pushing those guys back into each other. It's all so roughly sculpted at this point that that's kind of fine. Okay, now the rest of this rotation happens inside with the humerus. Okay, and now I'm going to rotate the hand. I have masked about half of the forearm, and I'm going to put that inside. And start to rotate that around. Okay, we're not going to get to moving the fingers right now, because that's going to be a little hardcore. But I will kind of change this arm so that it's rotating down. I just did that one big lump, moved it, because that's the easiest. I can then come in and do a little preliminary resculpting. And there we go. We've got a fashionable dwarf. He's ready for the catwalk. Look at those hands. Fingers, I'll do one real quick for you guys. Fingers are painful. If you are not having pain, you're not sculpting fingers or posing fingers. Also, there's a natural blur. You need to control Alt to get rid of that natural blur. And be very mindful that other things are not being unmasked. This is better if you're moving it like this. That's the better option. Now, you need to make sure that the mask is correct. So I don't often use transpose to do it. I will do this. But then at the same time, I have a polygroup for the arms, and that polygroup does not exist right now in this T-pose mesh. So I don't even really want to be messing with that stuff, because it's going to be much easier for me to handle it later. Smooth some of this out. Get as much resculpting as you can and you feel comfortable with. because otherwise it propagates up your subdivision levels. But anyways, show everything. We've got this part to worry about. I'm not going to sweat this too much, because with this clothing, I can pose that better as a subtool. Transpose master is really for the boots, you know, or for the helmet if I needed it. So now we go in, Z plugins, T pose, okay, and now we have to send it back. And it does all the work. This is done by Marcus Civis, ZBC guy. This is done when I was there. We saw this. He didn't tell us about it. We saw this and we're like, what? Why didn't we think of that? It's more like they looked at me and they're like, why didn't you think of that? It's a really cool feature. Really neat. And so now we've got our fashionable dwarf doing his Right Said Fred catwalk. And we can go in and quickly start to move this stuff around, and it'll be a little easier now because you're just kind of moving this guy, and you don't have all the extra pressure and stuff you got to deal with. And then this is going to probably only move a little bit. There we go. I'm gonna draw from one side to the other. It really just creates a mask halfway down. That helps me kind of segue that. So I can get some of the energy. Invert it. Okay. And then let's get that arm real quick before we got all of the other classes we have to run today. Solo mode. Solo mode's off. We can pull that down, pull it over, and then we got to bend it. This is a case where a Dynamesh might become important, depending on what you've got going on, because there's a lot that can kind of go wrong. And I'm just going to drop this with the topology of that arm. Okay, and now again, invert it. Okay, we can deal with clasping and all that stuff later. And there you go. Lots more to do, but this is literally on the fly in an hour and a half, 2 hours, to show you kind of some of the thinking of how you want to approach transposing, posing your model, as well as establishing your base mesh. Let's call it a day, guys. Any questions? Anything I can answer? What I would, while you're getting your questions, the assignment I would really like you to do is take your model, start to pose it, start to establish some other parts to it, straps and boots and all of these things. Just start to establish some character with various elements. Helmet, armor would be great, clothing of some sort, and then pose it. Carlos, I used Transpose Master because it allowed me to pose the body with the boots. That's the primary reason. Thanks, Mark. Okay. All right, guys. Nothing else? Then have a fantastic week. Remember, we are off next weekend. I will shoot you an email with expectations earlier in the week, such as is the content, the next project, going to be released for you and things like that. Feel free to let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the forums and give a call if we can do anything, or email me if we can do anything. See you, Greg. See you, Renato. Thanks, Oscar. Ignacio, Hector, Leonardo. Hey, Riley. Hey, Peter. See you, Hamdi. Thanks, Anthony. All right. I'm going to close it out. I'll talk to you guys later. Ciao, ciao. Happy 4th.